Good evening, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, live in Mackey Arena, following Purdue's riveting 93-49 win over Chicago State here in what was technically an Emerald Coast Classic game. Obviously, there is no Emerald, there is no Coast. There sure as hell isn't an Emerald Coast here, but this is the on-campus portion of the event Purdue will play in Florida here in a couple weeks. A game Purdue would not have scheduled on its own volition because they don't want any of these lead balloon games on their NCAA tournament resume anymore. So they're going to go out of their way to avoid games like this, I think, from a scheduling perspective from here on out. Had no say in the matter here. You sign up for these events, you get who the events get, and that's it. So did want to let you know in advance there almost wasn't a rap video following this game because this morning I was in a hell of a hurry. My father-in-law was coming down to watch my daughter, and I needed to get out of the house. And so I shaved very, very quickly. And yes, I missed a spot right here. Very embarrassing. I worried that whatever sort of high-definition picture you would be getting of this, you would see that I missed a spot shaving this morning. I would be terribly embarrassed and almost called off the rap video. I went so far as to see if I could shave with the edge of my hard, plastic, rigid credential. Didn't work. I have actually, scraped ice off of my windshield with a similar credential at Missouri in 2007 during an ice storm when Enterprise Rental Car, thank you very much, did not provide me with a scraper. These things actually do work. If you're absolutely desperate and you just turn your car on for like 10 minutes, let it warm up a little bit to thaw out the ice ever so slightly, if you can just get it going with the corner, you can do some damage. It's one to grow on. All right, let's talk about basketball, shall we? Purdue beats Chicago State 93-49. No one is beating their chest over this. No one should beat their chest over this. Chicago State is probably the most under-resourced, challenged program in Division I. They came in today at 353 out of 353 on KenPom. 99.98% chance of Purdue victory. This was arguably one of the worst teams, the worst team to come into Mackey Arena in years. I know Grambling was in a similar position a few years ago. Chicago State hired its coach in August after the job was open for 5 months because it is a very difficult job. You don't get a lot of support. Kind of is what it is. But you need these games. You need these receipts. You need these payouts, whatever they're getting from the Emerald Coast Classic to play in games like this. They need badly. So their job in the college basketball world is to go around and get beat by 40 by people so they can pay for their other sports. They can pay for their whole operation. So the outcome of this game was predictable. The path there, maybe not so much, because one of the big takeaways from this game is that Purdue didn't play very well. For 15 minutes, this was a game. This was a legitimate game. I don't think anybody in this arena thought Purdue might actually lose this game. But it was a game. Chicago State led with under 5 minutes to go in the first half. And then reality set in, the game normalized. What was interesting about it was Chicago State played a zone. I can't claim to be able to tell you whether it was a particularly sophisticated zone, anything different about it other than it was a zone. And it looked very easy to navigate. And Purdue probably navigated it too easily and got open shots whenever they wanted open shots. They just missed those shots. If it was a deal where Purdue was taking the first good three that came their way and they were coming their way like that, maybe there was a little bit of over-eagerness involved. Maybe it was just one of those games where you just miss shots. Maybe it was the sleepy 2 p.m. Saturday afternoon start on a college football Saturday. I have no idea, but to start this game, Purdue simply could not make shots. Defensively, I thought there were probably some real breakdowns as well. There were a couple of clear path opportunities for Chicago State that led to some buckets. Chicago State made some tough threes, but they also scored on Purdue, which the standard in a game like this, I know for a lot of people, is damn near perfection. And Purdue was far from perfect in the first half. Purdue just wasn't very sharp in the first half especially. What ended up happening, other than reality simply setting in, as I said, the game normalized, was I thought Travion Williams really changed the game. He finished with only 9 points and 8 rebounds, and in the warped reality of games like this, stats don't really matter. But I thought his effort on the glass really kind of set a tone for Purdue. It was offensive rebounding that I don't want to say won the game, because Purdue would have won the game anyway, most likely, but obviously triggered the landslide. I thought that was a good sign for Purdue that they found their best effort when they needed it. But you could argue, too, that if they played better in the first half, they didn't necessarily need it. One thing Matt Painter talked about after the game was that this team is not in a place yet where it can win games necessarily when it shoots bad. And this game doesn't count. You don't take this as any sort of indication of where Purdue is, what they're going to be, or anything like that. I get paid to talk about this stuff after games. I have to do this. But there's really very little relevance in this. There's very little water in this balloon, so to speak. No idea. Anyway, don't draw anything from these games. So when Matt Painter says Purdue is not in a situation where it can win games when it shoots bad, winning games some other way beyond shooting, I wouldn't take the fact that Purdue won this game by rebounding all of its misses in the second half as any sort of sign of growth. This is a game you play, you win, and you just get it behind you. But Purdue obviously has to prove itself against much better competition than this. They'll have that opportunity here in a couple weeks against VCU and then Tennessee or Florida State in Florida. What they need right now is to practice, because they have to get a lot better. And that's kind of the good news, is that Purdue gets a week of practice here before they play again. So this could be a very productive time for Purdue. Matt Painter always talks about this time of year, you go from one game to the next. You don't really have time to practice when you really need to practice. Now Purdue gets to practice. So we'll see if Purdue looks different against Jacksonville State next weekend, and then going to Florida for VCU and either Tennessee or Florida State than they do today. That's obviously the hope. Positives from this game, regardless of the obvious gulf in competitive balance between these two teams. I thought, obviously, Isaiah Thompson scoring 17 points. I know stats are warped in games like this. Stats don't matter. A lot of his points came when Purdue was up 25 to 30 points, upwards of 40. But anytime a young player kind of getting his feet wet in college basketball gets to have some success or experiences some success, builds some confidence, that's always a very positive thing. It can't hurt, at least. Jahad Proctor talked about how Purdue has been making sure he knows that they want him shooting the ball. So having actual results to show for when he does, can't possibly be a bad thing. Purdue is going to need minutes from him, I think, this season. Obviously, he did some positive things in the first half at Marquette. Didn't play as much in the second half, probably because of defensive matchups more than anything, but I think he's going to play a role for this team from here on out. Anything that gets the ball rolling in the right direction for him is a positive thing, even if this was an overwhelmed opponent on your home floor. Speaking of warped reality, one thing I talked about prior to the game is just the importance of Purdue being able to get the ball inside, to condition itself to play that way. And, you win a game by 100 points today when you end up with your best player, who I think is their best player, Matt Harms, getting one shot. So that just tells you how little you can use these games to kind of propel yourself forward in the areas where you need to get better. Purdue does, historically want to get the ball inside against zones. They tried to do that with A.J. Hammonds. They tried to do that with Isaac Haas. They tried to do that with Caleb Swanigan. They're trying to do that now with Matt Harms and or Travion Williams, whoever it may be. Today it didn't make a lot of sense because Chicago State was camping out in the lane. It's their only chance against those guys. They were really camping out in the lane. And that's the reason the three-pointers came so easily for Purdue. Maybe Purdue was a little too eager to shoot. Maybe it was just one of those days, as I said before. I don't know. But Matt Harms ends up taking one shot in a game you win by 45 points, whatever it is. So you really don't take a whole lot from games like this in that sense. A couple of things just to talk about, maybe not necessarily game specific, is I think Aaron Wheeler is really doing some positive things for Purdue, aside from scoring, making shots, whatever it may be. But I think it's pretty evident that he's still kind of feeling his way around in this new expanded role. And I thought today was another example of that. He is one of the guys that I thought his improvement from one year to the next really would be a difference maker for this team. And it seems like it might be a little bit of a process for him. I thought the other guy in that sense was Travion Williams. And I thought it's been a mixed bag for him prior to tonight. And again, I know it's Chicago State, but you kind of wonder if him coming in here and changing a game, literally not just helping Purdue win, but changing a game, changing the terms of play, changing the conditions on the ground, changing the game. You wonder if maybe that doesn't set him on an upward trajectory moving forward. Makes 3 or 4 free throws, too. That's positive as well, considering where he was prior. So those two guys, I think, are two guys who can, really, really take Purdue from one level to another here during this week of practice. I think Eric Hunter as well might be settling into a little bit of a role here. I know you don't take anything from a game like this, but I thought he played pretty well today. Did some positive things against Marquette. Obviously not perfect, but did some positive things. No Gel Eastern. I know Purdue wants to get him in some positions to score here this season one way or another, whether that's getting him going on the baseline, whether that's getting him going on the post, a lot of that stuff. That's going to be a process, too, just figuring out where he fits in the scoring hierarchy. Right now he's taking what seems to me like an inordinate number of jumpers. I know he's put a lot of time into that. It doesn't seem like it's quite there yet. I don't know where his confidence is in that. If he has a wrist problem and he says it's fine, but I cover sports and I know guys are always going to say they're fine. I don't know. That would not seem ideal. I don't know if he's to the place as a jump shooter yet where that's the shot that it's best for Purdue to be looking for, before the absolute end of a shot clock, something like that. A big theme around this team is going to be playing to your strengths. And, I think that's something that's kind of worth keeping in mind. I think Travion Williams making difficult passes out of the post sometimes is another area where, maybe that's not the battle worth fighting at that moment. There are some other things with a few of these guys, as is normal. They're going to figure out what their strengths are, what best helps the team. That's where everything changed for this team a year ago. Is guys realized, hey, I don't have to score. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. I just have to do this little minute thing that makes a huge difference for this team as it's constructed. I think you're going to see this team kind of move in that direction as they get some more games behind them, as they go through more experiences together and whatnot. And we'll kind of see where Purdue is after Florida. But as for Chicago State, it's over. That's the important part. That's what I got. For Brian Neubert from goldenblack.com and the unsightly patch of mist stubble on my chin, on my cheek, whatever it may be, thank you for watching. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. And thank you for processing our materials. However it is you process our materials. This has been our goldenblack.com rap video following Purdue's 93-49 win over Chicago State. Let's never do this again. Thanks, everybody.